welcome, both of you. Please come to me, come to front of us. Joana Hadjithomas, Khalil Joreige. And yes, you, Mike. You're going to sit in a few seconds, huh? But how can you define that? How can you name what you have seen? It's two shots I made in Paris. We were together visiting this exhibition. This what is that? What was that? What is that? And why do you think we begin this morning with these images? Good question, huh? Wake up, please.
Good morning. This is part of ongoing research that we are doing called Unconformity. We started working on archaeological and geological cores by accident, but maybe not totally by accident. We will talk about it. It's cores that are taken before any construction, or when we have to do parking or any building, and so they do like cores that go really down and take out some soil, and to understand and to analyze where the building is going to be constructed. And little by little, with Khalil, we started to be totally passionate by those cores, because we felt that this is showing what is underneath our feet and that we don't get to see usually. And of course, it's not noble material, but it say something about archaeology and geology. So we started collecting them and then working with archaeologists and geologists for them to tell us the story of what all those undergrounds. And this is part of an installation that we did in Centre Pompidou with three cities, undergrounds of three cities, Paris, Beirut, and Athens. That are the cities that we are related to, the two of us.
And now this installation, it's at the Hamburger Bahnhof in Berlin. So for us, it was also an interrogation on the writing of history, because usually, especially for Lebanon, we always say it's a city with 7 layers. And when we imagine... 7 layers. The city has been destroyed 7 times. And when...
Sorry, including this time now or not?
No. This is, we can add an 8th one. Actually I have now. I didn't get it completely.
Tragically,
yeah, we have to add one. But usually we imagine that a layer is like a linearity, meaning from the oldest one to the newer one. So it's gradually. But we notice that in archaeology, through archaeology, we have actions, what they called action. An action can intervene on several layers and upside down these chronologies, meaning the oldest part can be up and the newest one can be down. For example, if you dig, you're gonna take the remain, put them aside, and it will invert the chronology. All those kind of interrogation and are related also to our practice in cinema, to the way we have to tell a story, to the way that we have to refer to actions instead of linearity. So this work is also, as Joana was saying, it is still an ongoing project, and it was because here we're gonna talk quite further on from our beginning. When we started working on Beirut, we were thinking that because of the violence that we lived during the civil wars, it was difficult to write our own histories. In that project, we discovered that by destroying the city, we were able to know much more about the city, because it allowed us to dig into its past.
That was my first word, key word for today. You are diggers, aren't you? Diggers. You're digging in the past, in the soil, in the depths of the earth, of the histories of our souls, of our consciousness. So you're digging in the images and with the images, avec et dans les images.
Maybe I think we are really searching to understand narratives and the way we can live our present. So when we are digging, we are, in a way, if we have to say, we keep traces. So if you dig, you are removing some traces also. But what we did and what we try to do is to keep some traces, some understanding of how we can live together, how we can live the present, and our films and all what we're doing. It's a way of understanding how we can live in the present also today, and what is the position that we can have as filmmakers and artists, or how do you stand here? For example, what do you do?
When we say to dig, meaning to go back, maybe we use the past as a way to reactivate something in the present, or to be able to reconform ourselves in the present. But we are really interested in the way that we are able to live our present today. So I'm going to refer to the name of the exhibition in Berlin. We are scratching more than diggers.
Okay.
Meaning, you see, because we actually, all our projects are not things that we had not planned. They are things that happen in front of us, that interrogate us in our way of being in that place, in that city.
It's mostly encounters.
It's encounter, and it came because it's irritating. And then the more you scratch, the more it become irritate, and the more it become a necessity.
I think it's a good beginning, so you can sit down. Thank you very much. And please, dear public, you can intervene anytime. Just raise your hand or say a word, and we will give you the microphone with pleasure. You at any time welcome to this discussion. Just to mention, you're more or less 50 years old. Huh? Let's say that.
Less.
You haven't studied cinema. You're not coming from the art scene directly, and you are filmmakers. We will going to see some excerpts of films. You are photographers, especially you, Khalil, photographer. You are script writers, and artists. But an artist means to be photographer, cinematographer, scriptwriter, and everything, anything. Who are you? I mean, in this today creation, not only filmmakers, but also filmmakers. And what important has this faire des films, making films in the frame of the body of all your work?
I think because you know us a bit, Jean, you know that we don't like definitions, and we don't like borders, and so Khalil and me, we didn't study films or art. We started working together at the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s in Beirut. So it's a city that was at the verge of ending a civil war. And in this aftermath, we start thinking of why this war happened. We wanted to understand. We were very young, and we really wanted to keep some traces, because just as soon as the war finished, a huge project of reconstruction started, and we felt that we were reconstructing a city, but we were not reconstructing a society. And so we started to, like Khalil was saying, scratching, asking, and this is how we got to do films and photography or stories. It was not something that we planned. We just expressed. We wanted to keep something, so we took some pictures, and then we started to think like, what would be a good narrative to do with those pictures. So we started to do installations and films, but it was really something that we wanted to address to ourselves, our society, and so from the start, I think we were very political in our way of working, but also searching all the time for some poetics, because politics and poetics can be very close to each other, and this is what we're aiming to.
We're going to understand that with film excerpts we're going to screen, and it's the Civil War 1975 to 1990, 16 years of civil war in Lebanon. Are you carrying in your generation this history of this civil war? Do you feel to carry?
We can say
carry
that
on?
These are the official dates.
Yeah.
The official date started in 75 and in 90s, but we can easily talk about the moment where it's not something that just happened, and it didn't end, because we see that the situation in Lebanon is still very confused and very troubled, and we are going through a major crisis. So.
Like in 90, when we said it's officially the end of the war, the country is completely occupied. Till 2000 by Israel, and till 2005 by the Syrian army. And in 2006 you will have another war, and 2008 also. I mean, and 2007. Giving dates to the civil wars. First, we don't say a war, we always say wars, because it changed between the people who were fighting. It's not the same reason why you are fighting. So for us, it brings us a certain way to reinterrogate the complexity of the perception even of these wars. Of course, in a way, it's not influenced us, it's structured us. It's not defining us, but it nevertheless structured us. It structured us in our relation to the destruction, to the violence, to the way we want maybe to experiment something in common, to build something in common, not always a nation, but at least a relation, to build something that is that can stand maybe a little bit longer than what we are seeing destroying all the time. And till what's happening in these few days, where we have the sensation that a society is crumbling, is disappearing, is changing. So all that reason push us to start to produce meanings in the political word, to produce reason to believe in this word. This is a sentence of Deleuze that we love, but basically
it's not only that we are, it's not those years that constitute us. It's like when you showing the first project, the Unconformity project, what was really important in that project, it's really at the core of what we try to do, is that after it's cycles, and the cycles are disaster and regeneration and destruction and construction. And this is not only proper to Lebanon; it's proper to even each one of us. The way we deal with something in our life, or the way we confront. And so, for us, it's true that we were always very close to the Lebanese situation, but in a way, we always felt that Lebanon was an incredible and obscene representation of what is happening in a way everywhere, in a different way, or in each one of us. So, the construction of imaginaries that we felt was very present and representation in this country. It was really for us. Different from the war only. You see, it's a construction that keep people together, or make them confront each other. Right.
Is it important for us to know that you're living? You had a house, you had a studio in Beirut. It's destroyed now, but you have your roots there in Beirut, and you have an apartment in Paris, and you're traveling from Beirut to Paris, Beirut. Is it important for us to know that you are very close to your country, Beirut, Lebanon, and that you have also deep roots in France, in Europe, in our countries here? It's important to know your identities because of this being there and here.
Joana was saying that we try to escape the notion of identities, meaning of definition. I hope that our work will concern a person who doesn't know anything about us. Maybe he even thinks that we are not Lebanese or didn't know about Lebanon. It's important for us to be able, even if we are rooted in a place, meaning we are symptomatic of a place. We are working in a specific place, but nevertheless we can address questions and emotion to people coming from everywhere. Meaning I can be closer to from you than from my neighbor in Beirut, and I can be closer to you than your neighbor in Geneva or in Bâle. The question of the territory, it is not just a question of geography. It's more a question of time. It's being contemporary, meaning sharing a same time with somebody, a same concern, a same necessity. So it's not anymore the question. Of course, for us, we cannot be not in a kind of universal questioning. This is suddenly, it became metaphorical. I need to be routed in a location, but to, in the same time, land out of it.
You can be, something and something else. You don't have to be something or something else. So, for example, we live in Beirut and we live somewhere else. For us, we are very rooted, as Khalil was saying, in this country, but also for me, a festival is a territory of maybe where I feel very close to persons. We have concerns together. We are struggling for a kind of cinema or art, or we just enjoy a moment together. So there's I always want to say that when we say that there is no definition or we don't like definition, it's because we like this and something. So we could be like, when we started together working, and because we didn't do anything of like a school and people would say like, you have to choose, like you are two and you want to do art and you want to do films, choose something. You have to be like mainly a filmmaker or mainly an artist, and from time to time you do films or a filmmakers and you do some art. And we really fight a lot with this idea that we can do this and that. And we can also do a feature film and then do a short film or a video of 3 minutes if we feel that this is so important to do. So this freedom and this, it's really something that we cherish, and we really want to fight to keep it.
It seems to me very important to value this and not this but or. It's not here or there, but it's here and there. And I value that very much. I think it's important for us to understand this deep nuance between, because of this and. And you are end diggers? Can do division, sorry. Yeah, question? Yeah, please? Yes.
Recently I saw a film about Milos Forman, and it was from Helena Drasikova. And Milos Forman, he went to the United States and he tried to do a film there. And then he recognized that he was not born there, he was not rooted there, so he could not write scripts which are not connected to his upbringing. So that's an interesting question about what you say. That I think I saw the film yesterday, Memory Books, which I really liked. I think it was my favorite up to now here. I think you can't understand this thing if you don't know anything about Lebanon. I think you need the background is the Lebanon, and of course it's a message which is much more than just the Lebanon story, but I think it's based on Lebanon. So I think you can transmit in a way your upbringing or the basis of your socialization, but still it's very relevant. And that's I think maybe you're not so international, or we are not so international as we think, because we're always based on a certain reference from our upbringing and for our socialization and the codes we are imprinted by our culture and things like that.
Yes, you are right. The more you are, localized. We always do our film in Lebanon, in a very
in front of our house.
In front of our house. Usually we just go out, we see something happening. This is how it happened for the first extract that Jean showed. Like, we were working and on something else, and a cousin came and say, like, come, I have I want to show you what I do. Khalil went, he makes some photos, and we go out in the streets. There is like a whole archaeological site that is being digged. We started to be friends with this guy. It's always like this. So it's very localized what we do usually. But we feel that even with this localization, you can just talk to others. And it's true that, we come from a place and we feel, for example, but not only as Lebanese or as Arabs but also as filmmakers and artists, where we need to give representations. We are not part of the dominant representation, so we have to also add some representations that are like how we feel, like looks like us, not only how. I think when we started working with Khalil, it was also to be against the representations that were made from the West on our region. We really wanted to give our narrative.
We have to accept that we are always losing certain things, meaning, for example, memory box. A person, depending of its background, of its own history, will see things that another one will not see. Even between Joana and me, even if you are very close, each one is touched more by something than another. This context will allow you to be able to see certain things and not. And actually, part of our work is to give the sensation of what we are not able to see. Meaning, we have been very interested from the beginning, like Joana was saying, because we were fighting against this dominant representation on us, that we exist even if you don't see us, that we are there even if you don't point us and don't put the light on us. We exist, nevertheless. So we start to work on latency. Latency was something that guided our interest for years. Latency, in terms of photography, it's a picture that is taken but not revealed yet. In terms of psychoanalysis, it's something that is dormant, that can be revealed at any time. In terms of politics, it's this invisible society that can reveal at any moment. And it's exactly what we feel, especially in a place like Lebanon. It's haunted all our practices, be it with the presence of all the missing person, like in a film like Perfect Day, where we are dealing with the 17,000 missing persons that have been kidnapped during the Lebanese war and that are still missing till today. Among them, my uncle, who inspired this film. It is also in Je veux voir that we screened yesterday, the presence of all the cluster bombs. It is all the stories that are kept secret. And in this notion of story kept secret, we are referring to this as Hannah Arendt was referring to it. It's those let's say that a story kept secret is an anecdote. It's a small story that is aside the big narrative. The small story is where we can exist.
I can just invite all of us to read a small text by Jean-Christophe Bailly about anecdotes. Anecdotes which are meaning many, many things, much more than usual anecdotes. The anecdote, Jean-Christophe Bailly, an incredible, strong text about this notion of anecdotic matters.
Yeah, because usually we have like the pejorative way of saying, it's an anecdote, it's not important. But we feel that sometimes in the writing of history, there is the official history, and there are like those anecdotes where you can write a more subversive history.
Before to contradict you on one specific point, just mention what we've seen before this exhibition in Paris and many places. It's you spoke about politics and poetry, and I think I've seen the exhibition. It's amazing because it's completely rooted in the earth of different cities you mentioned, and you made out of it a poetic proposition, and it becomes a sculpture of the past, a sculpture of these disorders, all the disorders. I want to mention that how you're linking your work also in this passion, this desire to share on a poetic way these concernings which are yours, you know. So the poetic gesture is as important as the poetic gesture because it's the same. It's not one or the other. It's and. It's poetic and political. So it's obvious in this work.
In our way that we try to in this project actually, it is even related to our practice in film. So I have to describe a little bit the process.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it's important.
Yeah. So usually when you have a real estate developer, you have to study and who want to make a project. For example, build a huge building in a place, and you know that in this place you had several occupations before from a long time. Basically in Lebanon or Athens.
It happens here also, everywhere.
Yeah. You know that it was a place that was occupied for before and things like this. So at the beginning, before the archaeologists come, they have, like Joana said, they have to make boreholes to be able to study the ground, to know how deep they have to build the foundation in concrete of this new building. And then they will bring the archaeologists to check what is inside, what we don't see. Archaeologists are going to destroy their finding because they know from the beginning that they are studying it, taking out, and then we have to excavate everything to build our building. So basically we recuperate all the cores. We put them aside in a storage, and then with the help of the archaeologist and the historian, we start to build the matrix, what they call the matrix of this specific land. Meaning
this is a script.
A script. So basically, all the cores are like our rushes. We have a script. We have to look in the cores to the element of our script and re-edit the elements. So basically, in the cores that we are presenting, in this narrative that we are presenting, it's an editing. It is not taking like it is. It's not a ready-made. It is re-articulated according to the stories that we know of that place. So it's a question of editing.
Yes, and it's possible narratives. It's like the archaeologists, they tell us the story, or the geologist, and we recompose what we keep in our mind. So it's not very scientific, but it is scientific also, but it's also a reinterpretation. So it's always the way we see it, we see the story, what is poetic for us. And then we really wanted them to be vertical, so we invented this experimental resin, because we felt it would be so incredible if you could just walk and see history, but really like underground, but you just walk in. Of course, in my mind, it was a forest, of course, but
So you said you're filming in front of your house. That's not exactly true, because when you're filming the story of Kiam, this prison, you're not filming in front of your house. You're filming somewhere else.
In our house.
In your house. Okay, okay. But I mean, Kiam was not in front of your house. No. That was. So I would suggest to see one first clip about this film. One of your first important films, digging or dealing with what happened in this prison in south of Lebanon.
So when we did this film, it was just after a feature film that we made, Khalil and me. We wrote a script, and we didn't go to a film school, so we had we wrote a feature film. And because for us it was very important to write a story about reconstruction that was happening in Lebanon, because a lot of people were out of their houses. There was a big project of reconstruction, and people would say, like, we have to reconstruct the city. Others would say we have to reconstruct also that we cannot just remove people from houses. And so we did a feature film that was very heavy in terms of production, and we discovered this while making it. And the film was very successful in Lebanon and Arab world, but it was not exactly what we wanted to do. We felt that we were not having the possibility to master what we wanted. It was too complicated, too heavy with televisions and production. And so we decided to make a film that was totally the opposite. No budget at all, shot in our house. And we were working for several years on a detention camp called Khiam, a detention camp that was in the south of Lebanon. And at that moment, south of Lebanon was occupied by Israel and ruled by an army called the ALS, the South Lebanon Army, that was like a kind of
a proxy militia of Israel.
Proxy militia of Israel, and they were occupying this region. And there was like this detention camp that was a very famous detention camp, but we would hear about it and without seeing any image of it, because it was very strict. People would be detained there for many reasons. Well, because they resisted the occupation, or because they were like enemies of someone, or so they would put them in this detention camp, and without trial, anything, they would stay there for 6, 7, 8, sometimes 10 years. And because there were no judgments, there was no one also watching what was happening in the detention camp. There was a lot of torture, and it was a very, very difficult camp. So we were militating with another group of Amnesty and all those organizations to liberate this camp and to liberate the detainees in this camp. And
dismantle the camp.
And dismantle it, or at least that people could go inside the camp and see what's happening. And so we did this film with 6 people that just went out of the detention camp of Khiam, and we filmed them in our house on a chair. And the idea was that we won't show anything. We will just talk with them, and while they were talking, it will open in our mind some images and some representation. But also, it's so difficult to share an experience that is so limit as a detention and torture, that we will just listen to them, and little by little we will have the image of what can be a detention, or we could feel, they could transmit to us this.
When we worked on this project, we were focusing on something because we know them quite well, and we knew what they did to be able to keep their humanity in detention. So they produced objects of art. At least this is how they define it. During their confinement, in clandestinity, they produce artworks just to resist. It was like with with a small stone of 2 centimeters, they're gonna lime it on the wall and everything to produce a small sculpture, a witness. It was very important for us to be able to not to understand what they lived, but to see the condition of production of those artifacts. Meaning they were saying that in the camp they are artists, and outside the camp they became normal people.
And it was very fascinating this idea of to survive in this kind of, but we see it in other camps also, that to survive in those places where there is an attempt to dehumanize people. Here, the only thing that would keep them human was the art, where they were never artists and never considered themselves artists, and after the camp never used anything that was related to art.
Let's try to see some clips of the film. On peut y aller.
الجديد عنا هي الأحلام. اليوم كل واحد شو حلم. بيسولف الأحلام صارت إشي جديد عندي. يعني عم بجيب كلام هو ما بيعرفه من وحي الحلم وعم بحدث الشباب، فهذا شيء جديد. كل واحد من هذا حلم ومن هذا حلم، يعني تروح الصبحية على الأحلام. طبعا متى ما بلش الكلام توسع الموضوع. نخاطب بعض بالمنام، تجي بالمنام مثلا يعني اوقات يعني اقعد هيك اشرب، يعني نخاطب بعض اوقات يعني تحسي انه وكأنه عايش انا وياها مع بعض.
To understand the situation in Khiam's camp, so detainees were all alone in a cell of 1 meter by 1.5 meters. And for example, Sohab Shara stayed 6 years alone in a room in this cell, 1 meter by 1.5 meters. Also, they were put 6 of them in a cell of 2.5 meters by 2.5 meters. And you saw Raja'i, the first one who was talking about his dreams, and his girlfriend. He stayed 10 years, and then Afif. Our interrogation and our deep concern was about this question of time. How you deal with time and space in this kind of configuration. Like, what you do for not becoming crazy if you are alone in a room of 1 meter by 1.5 meters, or so this interrogation on time. So for example, they invoke their dreams to be able to open places that are not anymore inside their cell.
حتى اللي كانوا يحطوا لنا اياه براسنا داخله المعتقل ما بعرف بتحسي انك قوية. ليش ما بتحسي انك قوية؟ قادرة تعطي كثير، يعني بتعطي بلا حدود. بتحسي بالألفة والترابط. ما بعرف يعني بشكل رهيب. وخارج المعتقل يمكن لأني أنا سريعة يعني عندي كان شيء طبيعي.
المعتقل خلص عرف وين حدودي. يعني هالإنسان السلطات الموجودة خلاص عرفوا، أشخاص الوسخين عرفوا، بس هون مش عارف مين الوسخ ومين النظيف. بدي ضلني شو أعمل حسابي من كل اللي حوالي. هيك المعتقل وصلنا لهالنتيجة. السبب هيك قلت أنا كلمة أول ما طلعت بعد فترة من أفراد عملي، قلت إنه المعتقل أجمل حرية.
We don't need any sound. It's on this. It comes at the end of the film. It's the only image that we really see that are different from the faces of the former detainees, and we felt this silence is very important. No music, of course, but also nothing that we would add. It just the silence is also echoing this time that you spent alone without anyone to talk to.
The video at the beginning was different. At the end, we put images of because when we took these pictures, we took also photos of all the objects, and the photos are very strict protocol display, like an object, same kind of light. It's the photos that we exhibited usually in the show related to Khiam. But here, it was not working. It was too cold. It was too rigid. We need this kind of hectic and how we say fragile images.
Fragility also in the filming. The sound is not perfect. All this is adding something also to this experience. Like it's a shared testimony, because if you see the film, they got to say very intimate things about how you don't go crazy in small cells, and how do you do what do you think, how do you keep your sanity in a way. And also, it's a film that talks about heroism, heroic acts. Like when you want to, all of those people that are communists, they resisted, they did actions, incredible actions, and at a moment, so they are in those cells, and they feel that communism resistance is the most important thing to do. Like, and they are ready to fight. But when they go out, this is the end of this. What he says, like in the detention camp, it was the most beautiful freedom. It was very difficult for us to end on this, but he was really. We felt it's in a way provocative, but also we understood it's what he was trying to say. That this we will never say it, but he was able to say it because he lived it. And there's a second part to Khiam that we filmed like 8 years after, where in 2006 there was a war in Lebanon between Israel, Lebanon, and the camp was totally destroyed. And the camp was targeted and destroyed, because when we finished this film, the camp was dismantled, liberated. Israel left Lebanon. The South Lebanese army was dismantled, and so the camp became a museum. And this museum, people will go and see it, and the story of the camp and the resistance changed. So it went from being a story where communists were having a big role, but there was a rewriting of his history to be more the history of the resistance, being the resistance of Hezbollah. And so those people were, in a way, orphaned from the camp that was destroyed, but also orphaned from their own history. And we did a second part of the film that called, and we called it Khiam 2000-2008. So it would go from the camp being in action at the start, and then dismantled, being a museum, and then totally destroyed. And what do you do with a camp that is totally destroyed? What do you do with a place of memory that is destroyed? Do you have to rebuild it? But if you rebuild it, how do you rebuild it? Because there was this project of rebuilding the camp, and what does it mean to rebuild a detention camp? So this was a very interesting and vivid questions about how do you keep a trace? Is the testimony sufficient? Do we need a geographic place to remember? What do we do with this history? Is it important to remember? You know, those questions are very important for us.
And we can imagine you had hours of these words, these voices, and then your job was really to edit, to create a story, to articulate something from the beginning to the end.
It's two parts. The first one is to give them the frame for a talk to happen, meaning it's these are people who are very articulated. They are militant, so most of the time you will have a speech. A speech is something they know what to say, how to say it, and things like this. But if you want to start to have something like what we say, a talk, you have to give them the confidence, so such an encounter will happen. And it was very important for us to be able to create the condition of this intimacy for things to happen.
We filmed a lot, and then I was pregnant when we filmed, and I had to lay down for 5 months. And so we started to edit at that moment from VHS to VHS all time, and so we really worked on all the. We did a whole retranscription of what they're saying, and the idea was that they will continue the conversation. It would be a conversation between them, where each one of them was in his cell and didn't really know what the other was doing. Finally, there was a kind of conversation, a reunification of them.
I suggest to watch the end of the film, end of the second part.
Okay. So 8 years later.
لقيت زنزانة كتير صغيرة، وهذا بعتقد هي جزء من مخيلة الطفل. الشيء الفرق الوحيد إنه بالمعتقل مخيلتك هي مخيلة الطفل. هي بالنسبة لإلي. هلا السؤال حتى لاحظت مع كفاح إنه بس بتقول جملة بتقول كان المعتقل غير كله كتابات. مش مظبوط، ما كان كله كتابات. كان بدك تفتش عليه للحرف لحتى تشوف انت وين حفرت اسمك بالسراج وبالفتيل، وما في لا سراج ولا فتيل. ففي مخيلة ومخيلته للإنسان. الغريب انه انا برأيي بتصير مخيل الطفل حتى لو كان عمره 50-60 سنة داخل. هل من واجبي اني انا ارجع اعمله واقعي؟ ما ضروري. اهم شيء انه لما انقله للاجيال الثانية هون يكون واقعي.
Who is filming?
Khalil.
And you breathing.
Yeah.
Huh?
He's breathing and walking.
It's part of the dramaturgy. Huh?
It depends. Sometimes it is annoying to hear me breathing.
But if we
sorry, go ahead.
No, what I was struck while listening again to Soha talking, one of the detainees talking of reality, perception of reality, and what is to be transmitted. This was the most fascinating part of Raum 2008. This like, okay, if you have to rebuild a place or to retell a story, but who's going to say the story? And shall we? It would be reality or rewriting of history, something different. And it's in a way it's a subject also of memory box. If we this idea of a girl that is fantasizing the story and of her mother, and then the mother taking in charge the narrative, but doing it in a way that we don't know what is the real. Because when we remember, what do we remember exactly? This is a very interesting question.
And before to move to another film, nothing has been rehearsed. Everything is spontaneous. You never ask them to repeat something. Or how was what was the contract between them and you? You had just time. You were filming.
We take time. We take time, and we have a conversation. Meaning, we are not trying to demonstrate anything or to illustrate, meaning we don't know what we want them to say, and we're gonna try to get it to illustrate our thinking. Because I think that in a true encounter, we are always surprised by what is said. So we have to be led by this conversation and taken to places that we were not expected. And the conversation start to be very complex in terms of the issues that we were discussing all together. For example, okay, we decide to rebuild. How will be the wall on which you put your bag for 6 years? Can you describe it? Describe it carefully. So you see, Soha is talking about a wall that is full of writing. And she was saying, no, there was no writing. It depends how you look at it. If you look deeply in it, you will feel all the details. If you take a step behind, it will appear white. So depending on the traces you left in a place, it depends at what distance you are from that traces. As soon as the question of the micro and the macro, the close-up and the wide angle, you need both of them. And there's this alternation. And it's not that we should only focus on close-up. We need both. And there's no truth behind.
It's always a question of cinema, in a way. Yeah. It's a question of scale. It's a question of where do you put yourself when you do a documentary? Also, like how they look at us in the camera. We are just behind the camera. We just ask them, like, sit on a chair, look at us, and we just sit back, and the camera is in front of us, and we let them talk. We don't need to talk. We don't need, because in documentary you have the possibility to know exactly where you want to go. We don't know where we want to go. Even in fiction, when we write a script, we want to lose control. So this was very interesting. We were drifting with them and we are following what they were saying.
And I wanted to step in now this Je veux voir, and a first clip about shot in this journey, and they're still in Beirut, and they're going to leave Beirut, both of the characters. Okay.
Voilà. On est arrivé à la banlieue. À Italie.
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a dans la banlieue?
C'est le quartier qui était...
Le plus touché?
Oui, le plus touché. Durant la guerre. pense que les gens vous reconnaissent.
Non, je crois pas. Je crois pas vraiment.
C'est vrai. Il n'y a plus que dans cette rue qu'on peut voir des immeubles bombardés. Les autres immeubles sont déjà...
Ça a été rasé?
Oui, sont complètement détruits pour être reconstruits. C'est ça. Non, c'est vide. Il n'y a que de trous profonds. Toutes les ruines et le pierres et tout ça sont amenés et jetés quelque part ailleurs. C'est juste à côté de la mer. شوف ما فيك تصف هون ليه؟
لانه ما معنا اذن كلنا اجراءات امنيه ليه صف قدام محل ما كنا متفقين
طيب اوكي
Je crois que c'était là où on s'arrêtait. Non? On continue.
On continue.
On peut pas filmer l'immeuble juste après. On recommence un petit peu. C'est pas la caméra.
طب خلص ما بقى شعبالي ما عليك
Maybe explain a little bit how you decided to stage these two characters, one famous French actress and one famous Lebanese actor.
An artist and performer, Rabia Amroui. It was just after the 2006 war, and this was a war that was very difficult. Of course, it was a tragic month and a half when a lot of people lost their life, were wounded, lots of destruction also. But we didn't know how to talk about this moment and what images we could show, and also this idea of. We started working with Khalil and taking picture of ruins, and then again, you have to show this, and it's like from Lebanon, those representation. It's like no one is seeing them because the war didn't stop. A lot of images were circulating, and those images of destruction. It seems that people were seeing them, but not seeing them also. So we had this idea to ask a kind of icon of cinema to come with us to Lebanon. It's also because when you have like this kind of war, there is a rupture in all what you've been doing, a rupture in your artistic research or journey, but also in your history and in the history of the people that live there. So what do you do after that? So when we asked Catherine Deneuve, that we didn't know, but that was representing for us a kind of history of cinema, to come to Beirut and meet Rabia, who's kind for us also as a history of our generation, what we try to do in the country, the way we worked all the time together, what our generation tried to change and so they would meet, and our idea was that they would meet and we will see what's going to happen. It's like a chemical recipe in a way. Experimentation.
Meaning, if there is an encounter between these two histories, our history and the history of cinema, maybe there's a way to surpass this rupture, the rupture in our history. We have to reconfigure ourselves by invoking another history, be it the history of cinema. So it's like putting a bridge over a crack. So the history of cinema was, by invoking this history, we were trying to re-establish a continuation in a representation, in a practice, and things like this. Of course, in a place like Beirut, and it was a war between Lebanon and Israel, but inside, nevertheless, we had also opposition to powers that are sometimes mastering certain places, like the places where we are here.
We couldn't film everywhere. We had and this was also one of our motivation to bring Catherine Deneuve, because we felt that we couldn't film in so many places, and we will see after in the film that at the border it's very difficult to place a camera, to put so we felt like, how can we do cinema here? What can cinema do first, but also how can we still do films and cinema here? If we bring an icon of cinema, if we bring someone that is very known, would they let us open the road? So all what you see, it's only experimentation of it.
Meaning when we, a year before, when we went on the border, Joana and me, exactly where we are, we decided to shoot with Catherine Deneuve and Rabia, we put a tripod exactly in that place, and we were about to provoke a new war, because a tripod is forbidden on a border.
Can you show that? Have you
no, when we were there? No.
I mean, on your computer now.
This, yeah, of course.
Et ça, c'est la frontière?
Oui, c'est la frontière. La petite route là, c'est qui nous rapproche le plus d'Israël. Il a un statut flou pour l'instant.
C'est-à-dire?
Normalement, c'est interdit de marcher là-bas, mais on a eu l'autorisation juste pour le film. Peut-être parce que vous êtes avec nous. Ça va être proche de marcher là. C'est un sentiment bizarre pour moi.
But this is completely staged, or it is how it's a part of improvisation, putting these icons in this neighborhood, in this landscape.
It's not totally staged. It's like the way we worked in Je veux voir was that we wrote a script with Khalil. And we wrote a script based on all the experience that we had at that moment. So putting a tripod here, that was impossible because we did a lot of images in this part after the 2006 war. And so we wrote the script, but we decided, as usual, not to give it to our actors. So Rabia and Catherine, they didn't really have the script. And Catherine accepted the principle that she will go to Beirut for a week. And she will be in this, she will experiment with us without reading anything before. And it was very strange to have her trust. We'd have met like 2 or 3 times before, and we didn't really know each other. And so everything we decided that the principle of the film is that we put the actors in a kind of setup. We are ready to film, but what happens, we film. So we don't really know what's going to happen. We try to get close to what we wrote, but if something else happens, we follow. It was very important to keep a really fragility and precarity, lose totally control by filming because of the situation. You cannot be very strong, and in this kind of situation where everything is destroyed, you have to adapt all the time. And we wanted to adapt all the time. So this is why we see that they stop the camera. We're here at the border. We don't know if they're gonna open. We ask because here you have the UNIFIL, the Hezbollah, the army, so many people that have to decide, Israel in front, to decide if we can just open this small road and walk 2 seconds. So it's a lot of preparation, a lot of time we wait, and for them to just stop after like few seconds because there's a big hole and they cannot do anything. So it's so many negotiation, but what is important is that this negotiation can open a small road even for a few seconds. For Khalil and me, it was pushing the territory, pushing the borders of this territory and putting a kind of territory of cinema in a place where it's not at all what you find usually.
Meaning that we were hoping that by the tools of cinema, we were able to negotiate, meaning to interact in the real, not just to record it, but to intervene in it, to be able to open this road, even for a day. It's symbolic, but it means already a lot. Of course, this film, in its heart, there's a question of the fiction and the documentary. What is stage, what is not stage? The presence of Catherine Deneuve brings by itself a fiction. And this is in the excerpt that you want to present at the beginning. It was how you're gonna film her in the suburb of Beirut with all this building destroyed. Meaning, if you do a shot counter shot, you can film her in Paris and do the counter shot somewhere with her after. So we need to have these 2 images, and we thought about this reflection, to be present and reflect what's happening outside in the same time. And here it was very important why we are choosing Catherine Deneuve. It's not just because she's a star and she represents a history of cinema. It's also because of her face. Her face has this aura, like Benjamin was saying, that she's at a certain distance. She's not affected by, meaning I don't care about what was she sensing at that moment.
She is affected.
She is affected, but it's not about that. She's not trying to instrumentalize or to hijack the real. She's just present. And by this simple presence, it's already a lot. She's reflecting what is there, and at the same time what is there is, so it's always creating this kind of surreal and over reality, like it's an augmented reality of what we are seeing.
And the idea that maybe because of her, we could see the idea of je veux voir. She wants to see, of course, but it's more like, can we see after? Can we see because she is here with Rabia? Maybe we will be able to see. Maybe the audience, the Western audience, will be able to see again, because they will be afraid for her, or they would just ask like, what is she doing here, or they will be annoyed by her or not. But something will be as a vector between those runes that no one seems to see.
And you didn't ask her to say specific things, because in the film she almost doesn't speak. So it's really je veux voir, and I don't want to speak out what I'm seeing.
No, she's very clever. Like we say, she's a director by herself. She knows that it's every word can be misunderstood, or when you work with an actor, you create context of conversations. Meaning, it's not that it's out of the blue. We discuss certain things before, and these things reappear. She knows what we are trying to do, and suddenly she built the situation with the help of Rabia, because she understands more and more the context and the situation. It's exactly like in boxing. You train one, you train the other. You know exactly what are how they. But when there's something happening, you don't know from where it will happen.
We worked like this with actors it's been a long time. We don't give them the script. We will stay a lot with them. We talk a lot, and then they interact with the situation. And because we feel that they are more interesting than what we wrote. And if they can't do anything, or they are blocked, or we can give them the sentences to say, or we can tell them more about the situation. But their affect is and their experience is something valuable. And here, for example, Catherine, she never went to a country like that, so she's very impressed in the film, and she's not going to say like c'est affreux, it's terrible, or something like that. No, she's like just keeping what she's saying. And for example, she's driving with Rabia, but at the beginning of the film, we see they met, and this meeting, it was their first meeting. And it was really the first time they see each other, and we felt it was really more interesting they were not introduced to each other before filming. She gets out of her hotel, and he's here waiting, and they go in the car, and we follow them. So they're very like shy with each other. They don't know each other. But first we talked a lot with Catherine, a lot with Rabia. So they say the sentences in a way that we wanted them to say, but in a different way. And Catherine was really interesting, and we didn't know at all, is that her sister was Françoise was very close to Lebanon, and she went with her many times, and she went, Françoise, many times to Beirut, and Catherine was wanting to go with her before her car accident. So, and we see in the film, Catherine is always very, very like talking about cars and her belt, and you should put your belt, and we were like, okay, this country is totally destroyed, and she's talking about her belt. But afterward, we understood that she was referring to unconsciously to her sister, to this relation to the car accident, this relation that they both had to Lebanon, this idea of wanting to go together.
The way that we deal with for example, in the extract she chose, Rabia asked her, maybe people recognize you. And she said, oh no, not at all. But what we are doing here is that we are bringing the setup of cinema. In the film, we think that we are 10, but actually, we are a huge crew. And we are bringing the crew in those places where cinema is usually not possible anymore. It's exactly the opposite of Pedro Costa. Pedro Costa, he tried to infiltrate discreetly.
That we liked very much.
That we like, yeah. But here, we are invoking like an occupation. Like we are colonizing this place with the tool of cinema. Meaning, for example, the car, there is a huge engine that are installed, there is lighting, and we don't want to be discreet.
Could you show that? You have pictures?
I'm not sure that we have, no, I'm not sure that we have images. Like I have to search somewhere else. But you see in the credit that it's a huge...
it was this idea of bringing back our territory. So this is why, for example, in the first extract,
okay.
we see the camera that is
in
stopped.
this image. If in this image, okay, you see a little bit of the trucks that are behind us.
This is the crew.
But yeah, except the UN that is.
And the helicopter. But
and
you
the
have
helicopter,
to feel like how there's UN, tanks, helicopters all the time. It's like crazy at that moment on the border. Everyone is so tense. Israeli tanks, Hezbollah, UNIFIL. It was just incredible. And so this was really a funny moment where the French want to take picture with Catherine.
So you see, so in front, we imagine that we are only 2 cars, but in the back, you see in the first image how many trucks and things we have. So just to.
But because the question is what can cinema do? Like what can we do? Do we have only? We should only do documentary, reality, or can we have fiction? Is it possible to make fiction in these countries, in those places, in those situations? Are we allowed to, or even if we go on a documentary mode, like we did, will fiction reappear at a moment? So this was the idea of the film also. But fiction reappear, and fiction. When we talk about fiction, it's our ability to dream, our ability to transpose ourselves out of this reality.
I was talking yesterday about the last shot of the film where suddenly she look at him, he look at her. And this is where a connection is established in their relation. And we had this conversation on Zoom. Here, this is a kind of rhetoric of cinema, where we have suddenly, we are equal, shot counter shot. And we can imagine whatever you want to imagine. So for us, it's how you go out from a certain kind of images to this possibility of fictions.
It was really important also that Rabia would gain a face, because when we go through this kind of wars, you have the impression that faces and names and disappear, and we only have numbers of victims without their history, without anything. So instead of showing all this, we thought like we will show Rabia just one face, but his face will be as important as Catherine's face at the end of the film. Because first, of course, you're attracted to the star and to the Western idea of cinema, and then little by little, Rabia becomes really present, and it's the first time where we do the shot counter shot. During the film, we never use this. It's the bringing back our faces, our stories, our presence. Because this is what you feel. You feel when a war starts, and in so many of those regions and beyond, there's only numbers, there's only victims, there's no faces, there's no stories.
When we are talking about faces, is to get out from the generic title, from the status, to incarnate a singularity, a history. So all our work can be seen as an attempt to understand how violence and wars affect images and storytelling. It's not that we are recording or representing violence and history and wars, but it's exactly on the contrary. And this is, for example, something that Jacques Rancière questioned a lot in our practice. It's about how this the war and the violence affected the image by itself, its mode of production, its mode of perception, and the storytelling.
Any questions from the audience? You can anytime raise your hand. Nobody? It's very interesting what you're pointing out. And one image in the clip we've seen is amazing. It's I think it's made by chance. Catherine is sitting in the car behind the window, and on the window you have suddenly the shadow of a destroyed house coming on her face. We have her face.
This is not made by chance.
No, because it's yeah, but it's a great shot, because it's really this superposition of her, this icon, and the reality of the destroyed city.
Exactly. This was an impossible superimposition, and this is the way maybe you would look at this house, but I was in another kind of attention.
I have selected other excerpts. I don't know. Maybe we should see before your propositions. I don't know if we can see one more excerpt of Je veux voir. Maybe the famous. Maybe it's clip number 7.
Je ne sais pas comment t'expliquer. Il y a tant de choses que j'aimerais moi-même comprendre, mon chéri. Des choses qui me concernent, ce que je prouve pour toi. Ça n'a rien à voir avec le plaisir. C'est bien au-delà. Je ne te demande pas de me croire, mais je ne me suis jamais senti aussi proche de toi.
Ah, je reconnais, ça c'est un monologue que je disais dans Bildrausch.
Je l'ai vu plusieurs fois. Mais en fait, je le connais dans les sous-titres arabes. Vous voulez que je le dise?
Oui.
كيف أفسر لك وأنا نفسي أود لو أفهم الكثير من الأمور يا حبيبي. أمور تتعلق بي وحدي. لا، ليست اللذة ما يربطني بك، إنما أبعد من ذلك. لا أطلب منك أن تؤمن بقولي، ولكني حقا ما شعرت قط بقربي منك كما أشعر اللحظة.
Ça va sembler très joli comme ça. C'est curieux comme on se souvient des fois de morceaux de films alors qu'on ne se souvient pas de prénoms qu'on portait dans les films. Ça n'a rien à voir avec l'intérêt qu'on a eu pour le film, l'importance du film, comme ça c'est très curieux.
Mais on dit mon chéri, ma chérie.
Ben là, comme vous dites le texte, que c'est le mien et que c'est une femme qui s'adresse à un homme, vous êtes obligé de dire que mon chéri.
Il faut que je dis avec ma chérie.
Voilà, ça me paraît bizarre. Parce que vous me dites à moi, il ne va plus y avoir de décalage. Je sais même pas d'ailleurs si j'avais déjà entendu comme ça. Je sais pas si je l'avais réalisé, je vais dire, voilà. Qu'est-ce qui se passe?
Ne vous inquiétez pas.
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a?
Ça va. Excusez-moi, hein,
Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé?
Non, là, comme cette route n'est pas sécurisée, on a préféré arrêter.
Ah, c'est pas la bonne route?
Non. Attention, restez sur les marches.
Oui, ça va.
Sur les marches, là.
كنا عم نحكي وشرد
معلش.
C'est ma faute.
C'est pas
Ça va.
ننزل السيارة.
السيارة يلا.
إيه بس انتبه ضلك محل الأول.
They were speaking about cinema, about the film she shot with Buñuel, Belle de Jour, and suddenly another story is intervening, interrupting the conversation. And it's your idea to let them speak about Buñuel's film? Yeah?
Yeah.
The idea is that
it's a way also for them to flirt, because he's flirting, but more ma chérie.
they come out of Bint Jbeil, that is the village of Rabia. It was a village totally destroyed, and so destroyed that he is not able to find his grandmother's house. So it's a moment where destruction is beyond what you can imagine. So we had this desire to remove the image. So it's a moment of blindness. They are in the car and everything becomes white, and then it becomes black. So no image anymore. And
this is very strong. It's visual. It's enlightening. Everything is becoming overloaded by light.
Yeah.
Then suddenly the black hole.
The image is like the image. It's retreats, like it disappear, le retrait, and so of course everyone was against this idea of black, because black people would go like, there's a technical problem, and the television will never accept a film with so many minutes, seconds of black. But it was really fundamental for us to put this black image disappear and images come back by evoking cinema, evoking a film like Belle de Jour, and a film that Rabia and really liked. And so this idea of bringing back reality with films, with history. And of course, things happen after, where he's flirting, so he forgets about the road, and it was very strong because it was showing how we were always anxious during the shooting, because in this part of the south where we were shooting, there was an incredible amount of cluster bombs. And the cluster bombs, you never know where it is. So it can explode at any time. And everyone was telling us, like, you're totally crazy to go with a crew, but to go with Catherine. And in the film, we see that there is like a bodyguard that is always close to her. And we had to negotiate with him that he won't get in the car. So there's big negotiation with Bernard, and Bernard after he accepts. And so suddenly it's, but it was really interesting, because I think that even if we are really scared at that moment, it was very clear that you are also scared, or you ask yourself, like, is it possible that this happens? So you understand what is a cluster bomb, that are totally latent, and how can we show you the danger that is roaming everywhere while we are shooting.
Meaning the danger is something that we know is here, but we are not sure. We don't know where it is. There's more than 1 million cluster bomb. A cluster bomb, it's something that is forbidden to use. It's a bomb that will explode before hitting the ground, and will send all around on 100 meters small, like mines, that are linked together, that can go in the floor in the soil and be mixed with with earth, or it can go on tree, and suddenly with the wind it will go down and explode.
So we were all like, don't walk here. Let's stay in the mark all the time. We were staying in the mark.
We had people from the army telling us this has been verified. You can go on this street, not this one street. Sometimes there's no more streets, but you understand what I mean. So we had the risk was too big, actually. But here there is something important for us is that. Let's say that the film I want to see finished before that sequence. And here something else is starting.
The start of the fiction, in a way.
The start of a fiction, the start of a possibility, another kind of encounter. Okay, where this flirt, if you want to tell like this, will lead us to something different.
I think you would like to share some clips or images on your computer, this famous computer. But before, maybe to have two endings of this morning, I propose the first possible ending. As you know, many filmmakers, maybe not you, but many filmmakers don't find the right ending of the films. So we have to face first end, second end, third end, and so on. And I would suggest a first but not definite end of this morning, with the clip number 13, please. 13. It's you will see. It's very surprising.
شو كان صار لو هالمشروع ما انقطع؟ لو النادي اللبناني للصواريخ ضل مكفي بالفضاء؟
اليوم المجيد قررت بلدان العالم المتقدم إرسال عدد من الأقمار الصناعية إلى الفضاء الخارجي لإكمال إكمال مهمة فوياجر 1 الذي تم إرساله منذ عشرات السنين في مهمة استطلاعية. مسافرا بسرعة 17 كيلومترا في الثانية بالنسبة للشمس، وحاملا على متنه رسالة رمزية من البشرية، فوياجر 1 هو أول قمر يمر بمحاذاة نجم كوني. سيتوقف هذا القمر عن العمل بسبب افتقاره للطاقة. عند هذه النقطة تنتهي رحلة فوياجر 1 لتبدأ رحلة الأقمار الصناعية الأخرى. ستحاول هذه الأقمار جمع عدد وافر من المعلومات عن الفضاء الخارجي، كما ستبعث برسائل على شكل صور وأصوات عن كوكب الأرض. كل هذه المعلومات مسجلة على أقراص ذهبية جولدن راكت لملاقاة الآخر في الفضاء البيفلكي. لبنان سيرسل القمر الفضائي أدونيس الذي يحمل ألوان العلم اللبناني لينطلق مع باقي الأقمار الصناعية لاستكشاف الفضاء الخارجي وملاقاة المطلق. القمر الصناعي أدونيس يحمل صورا وأصواتا من لبنان بعيدا وعاليا كرسالة سلام وتحرك. وبالمناسبة سأقتبس كلاما للرئيس جيمي كارتر بمناسبة إطلاق فوياجر 1 لنرسله إلى سكان الكواكب الأخرى ونقول لهم: هذا هو حاضر بلد صغير وبعيد، هذه هي أصواتنا، هذه هي صورنا، هذا هو تاريخنا وأفكارنا وأحاسيسنا. سنحاول أن نتعايش مع زمننا حتى نستطيع العيش في زمنكم.
In accordance with our instructions, we continued toward the planet which its inhabitants called the Earth, in order to study their mode of life. The intelligent creatures on this planet call themselves human beings, and they exist in an amazing variety of conditions.
تحياتنا للأصدقاء في النجوم، يا ليت يجمعنا الزمان.
Bonjour tout le monde. Hello from the children of planet Earth.
It's the end of the Lebanese Rocket Society, and what the hell? What is this cartoon? Your Golden Dream.
It's a film that we made just after Je veux voir, so we needed something totally different, and we heard in like. The story, but it's been like years that we had we were doing research on the story of a possible Lebanese rocket society. It's a society that launched rocket in the 60s for space exploration. And so the space exploration coming from Beirut is very strange because no one really heard about it. And it was very famous in the 60s and totally forgotten after. So was it the war? Was it the representation of ourselves that didn't mix anymore this space race? So we really wanted to tell the story of the Lebanese Rocket Society and to ask how a group of Lebanese and non-Lebanese coming from all the region met at an Armenian university and started to make rockets. First, it was Manouk Manoukian, who was this math professor, who wanted to train them for propulsion, and he was founder of rocketry and at that moment, rocketry and space exploration was really the subject in the 60s.
Sorry, can we have the image from the computer? I would like to show images at the same time.
And so we started. We found this stamp first. The story was told to us by my sister, who was doing a research, Tanya Amhanna, and we found this stamp in a book edited by the Arab Image Foundation.
Actually, it had something to do with Je veux voir and our relation between reality and fiction. Here, when we started with such an image, Joana's sister came and she said, did you know that Lebanon had a space program in the 60s? We thought it was a joke. Actually, nobody knew about this project, and how come we didn't invent a toaster? How come we're gonna make rockets in space? So, and in this stamp, you see it's a drawing. So in a drawing, we can always exaggerate. We put it actually in the stratosphere. It's a joke. Suddenly, we found another kind of images. And this kind of images, no, this is more serious. And nobody knows about this fiction. Even our producer, when we came and say, we want to do a film like this, it's a joke. So, in I Want to See, it's a fiction that is a documentary. Here, it's a true fact that became a fiction. It was
for us, but
not for us, but it became impossible. And why it became impossible? So we thought at the beginning it was because of a lack of images. That's the lack of images due to destruction of the archive and things like this create a kind of unknown history and a gap. But actually, in our research, we managed to find a lot of images, and all those images generate things that were actually it was not the reason. So we have to think why, despite all those images, we forgot about the story. And little by little, so here we have the launching of Cedar 4. They produced 10 rockets.
They called them Cedar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they had to stop after 1967. And we went with Khalil
after the war
of 1967 because rockets were too dangerous, and even if they really wanted them for space exploration, it could become a weapon. And so
because this one, for example, landed in Cyprus.
No one got hurt, but it was the end of the dream of rocketry in Lebanon, where they were really close to have a satellite. And so, in the end of the film, the extract that Jean wanted us to show you, there is this idea of if we had had a satellite, we would have found, if the project would have continued. So we would have found that in the waters of in the sea of Lebanon there is like oil. That is gas, and that this is a real fact. And so we would have extracted the gas, and it would have been like a more contemporary city. Of course, it's in Kronia, and this city would prevent all these interferences in our history, and we wouldn't have like a civil war, and we would have sent in space a golden record. So the story of the golden record, to be quick, is that when we started working on this project, we went to see all the people that participated actively in the Rocket Society. All of them were scattered all over the world, one of them in Tampa, the other one in Pennsylvania, one in Canada, in Lebanon. So we tried to find them and to make them say the story, because it was very important to have their story and all the facts and all the images. And we found all the images and all the launching, newspaper clippings, everything at Manouk Manoukian, the father of the project, who lived in Tampa. And so in the first part, we said the story, and then it started to become like an art project, because there were so many things to say, and we were very inspired by the Lebanese Rocket Society. It was producing for us images that we don't see from the region, images of rocket, of skies, of modernity, being contemporary with the rest of the world, like sharing the same time. Like, this is something very important, as you understand, for us. And also science fiction in the region. This is why the end of the clip was very important, to make images of Uchronia, science fiction, that you see, but you don't, that are present, but we don't really see a lot coming from this region. And so the Golden Record was an important part of one of our art project, because we asked the people of the Rocket Society to tell us what their souvenir of sound of that moment, because we heard that they were put in the head of the rocket sounds, to be able to follow the rocket, the trajectory of the rocket. And at the same time, we remembered that the American did a golden record to send this golden record into space. And in this golden records, engraved images and sound from our planet. But while we listened to this golden record that is sent in 1977 in space, we felt that we were not very represented in the region and others. So we decided to create our own golden record with the souvenir of people from the Rocket Society and others. So this is what you see at the end.
At the end, the sound that you hear on the credits actually are the real sound of the golden record. So, for example, the way the American represent the French talking to alien, it's bonjour tout le monde, you see, where the American is a child, very articulated and things. So for us, it's also a way that you want to represent yourself to them. The guy who did this project, his name was
Carl Sagan.
Carl Sagan didn't believe in aliens. So he worked all his life making a message to nobody. In a way, it's like us. This is the difference between art and communication. In communication, you know to whom you are addressing yourself. In art or in cinema, you shouldn't know your audience.
You throw your bottle.
You expect somebody to listen to you, to help you, to love you, but you don't know from advance. Because this, if not, it's maybe in television sometimes it's different, but at least I don't know you. I don't have preconceived idea. I hope that something will happen between us, but it's not there yet. It's a very important difference for us, this change to do not project on the other what we don't want to be projected on us. So no preconceived and defined.
But we really liked this idea of a golden record still floating in space, trying to encounter like an interstellar bottle sent message, and so we felt it was really important. So to make our own. So this is an installation that we showed several times, and we felt that it's a good ending.
And the idea in the film, in the Lebanese Rocket Society, had something in common also with Je veux voir, because in the 60s, a rocket was targeting space and the stars. Today, if you think about a rocket, and this is what we see in the beginning of the film, you will see missile targeting Israel. So by reactivating the past in the present, by making a tribute to those dreamers, we decided to rebuild the rocket.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the rocket.
Yeah.
The Cedar 4.
And to put it on a truck.
And to offer it to the university where the project started. because there was no physical evidence of this project. So we felt that we have to give physical evidence, and university is very in a very central place where everyone could see it. So we built this rocket and we offered it to the university as a tribute to those dreamers, because we need dreams more like we needed fiction. We need dreams, but we really insisted to put it on a truck, because in the 60s they would build the rocket and send the rocket on a truck to a place called Dubai in Lebanon, and it would be launched there from Dubai. And the space where the factory where we constructed the rocket was in Dubai. So we felt it has to come back on a truck. But of course it's not the same moment of our geopolitical life, and so to put a rocket that is a space rocket and a sculpture, but seems like a missile in a country like Lebanon, there is a lot of negotiation. And as you understand, maybe now we love negotiations.
It's not that we love.
We need negotiations.
We are fighting against the shrinking of our territory and of meanings. Meaning, if this was possible in the 60s and it's not possible, meaning that we have to fight to enlarge our territory, to enlarge the possibility, even in terms of meanings. Meaning,
it's
if
very
today,
symbolic.
It is symbolic. Actually, we are just
it will pass, and okay, but we really wanted it to do it. Even if it's important, it's more about the representation of it, showing it. Okay, this is a missile passing through Lebanon.
And to make possible for us spectators to believe in this rocket, even though this rocket is a perfect fake.
It's a sculpture.
It's a sculpture.
It's a sculpture. It's not anymore a rocket. I don't have this knowledge. But I cannot do everything with one, no? But at least it was a sculpture. And if we can go back to the video, please. It's only in two territories. The territory of the university, this is at the High Gazian. And the territory of art, this is, for example, in a biennale, in the Sharjah Biennale. In these two territories, the rocket cannot be misunderstood. Meaning, it is either a sculpture for education and science or for art. So the context is very important, and you need to be able to fight against this misunderstanding.
Would you prefer to have this sculpture in Beirut on the Square of Liberty?
No.
No, it's really well presented at school, at this university, and it was also not only a tribute to dreamers, but a tribute to Armenians, because those people that built the rocket are mostly from the Armenian community. It was an Armenian, and it still is an Armenian university mainly, and they were giving back a gift to the country that had welcomed them. When they had to leave Turkey, when they were forced to leave Turkey and exiled, Lebanon welcomed many Armenians. So there was like a gratitude, and we really loved this idea of giving back. So we are giving back to them something that they gave us also. And in this exchange, we rebuilt links between us also.
But you see, something very strange happened. We worked for years with, you don't know. We worked for years on the Lebanese Rocket Society. I'm talking about years with different researchers and things like this. And in the end, as you noticed, we were imagining a museum for the Lebanese Rocket Society. We used animation to be able to imagine science fiction. Actually, we were invited for an exhibition in Tripoli. Tripoli is the second city in Lebanon, where you have a huge fair that is unfinished, built by Oscar Niemeyer. It was built in the 60s and never finished. And when we were in front of this helipad, there was this hole, this black hole that you can see here, that was closed. You cannot see here, but there's actually iron doors and stairs. And everything was burned inside. So, of course, what is this? Can we go and see it? We went inside, and everything was burnt. And they put hundreds of 5,000, you know, these plastic chairs that are produced in China, and there was a fire, and they all melt there. We ended by understanding that Oscar Niemeyer was asked in '62 to do the first space museum in the world. He was asked by the President of the Republic, and these are in the archive of Oscar Niemeyer. It's his own drawing where he imagined a space museum. You see, it is a space museum and a helicopter landing up front. So actually, under the, it was more than what we were imagining. So there was a space museum. We imagined it in Beirut, but actually it was in Tripoli. So we produced new works related to that with a different scenario of a museum. And
exhibitions that would be shown in this museum. But this is typical of the encounters that you can have, like if you just accept that life is giving you much more than what you search for. So this was the...
So these are the objects that we saw in the film, if you have to exhibit them in the museum, the Oscar Niemeyer.
The film, the animation.
So you're still waiting for this opening of this museum?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we hope that it will happen one day.
We're coming at the end of this morning. Any remark or questions of you, dear public? No? So I haven't your files. Would you share with us a last image, last sequence of something which could be a kind of way to say goodbye, see you later, see you soon?
Depends.
What we try to communicate, I think, today is that not only this idea, but that the fact that the way we try to do films or to do art, or it's really mainly about encounter and signs, things that we find and we follow, and we accept to lose some control, so we don't give the script to the actors, or we just follow things that happen to us. Maybe what we can say that this was, for example, the memory box, the way it started. It was by me retrieving those notebooks and tapes and letters that I wrote during 6 years to my best friend who had to leave Lebanon to go to Paris, and I stayed in Lebanon, and so we talked and we over those tapes, and we wrote to each other every day. This was our promise to each other. And when we found all those after 20 years, we met again, and because we lost contact, but we met again after 25 years, and we swapped and we exchanged and had all those correspondence again. The idea is like this happened for a reason, and the reason maybe is a film. So maybe this is always the fact that if you are just you stay attentive, aware of what's happening. Maybe it's something that's a transformation of. This is where you need hope to transform everything, to find light in things that happen to you. And this, I think, Memory Box was a great adventure for that.
As we know, at least in cinema, one picture and another picture are not two pictures. It creates a third picture. 1 + 1 is 3. And of course, the question you know by heart for many years, you are one and one. How do you deal daily to create a third presence among yourselves?
We do not separate our. Let's say that our relation is a life project, even in our work. Meaning we have no separation in our practices. Meaning it's not that I take pictures and she's writing. It's much more mixed. We took the picture together, even if I press a button. It's like having kids. I would say it's my kids, and she would say it's her kids, and it's our kids. But depending of the situation, we will change the pronoun. Meaning, when I'm upset, I would say it's her kids.
I think maybe I'll go back to this what we said to start the idea of and or. You know, when you work with someone, you have the possibility to say it's his idea or my idea. It can be a fighting, and when we do something like we fight a lot, Khalil and me, but we have think collaboration cannot be based on ego. You know, it cannot be based on frustration, cannot be based on the idea of his idea or my idea, his shot or my shot. No, if it has to be his shot and my shot, his idea on the script and mine, his picture and mine, his. So this is very important, and it always creates something else, because I could have not done it myself, and he couldn't done it alone. It's our collaboration that created something else. And we like collaborating, of course, because we do films. And I think that when you do film, you're always collaborating, and you're always trusting others and not keeping things or your vision. There's nothing that is my vision. I nourish all my idea with him and with the rest of the people that are our collaborators, and after with you. You know, it evolves and it can change, and I can re-question myself a lot. So it's always him and me, not it or me.
Like you have been today, this morning, you both of you, and us here, the spectator.
We hope.
Yeah. And the very last remark is. You mentioned that at the beginning, and we know that Lebanon is a catastrophic situation. It's really a catastrophic situation. And you still have this burning fire in yourself, this feeling of urgency to create objects, to create films, to create images. It's obvious for you. You're going on.
We have to create, we have a rage because of what corrupted leaders made of this place. Of course, I'm not saying that we are just victims. It's not that. It's just they are spoiling and destroying everything. So we have to fight and resist to be able at least to create the condition of encountering, of being in certain places. But it's very difficult because all our family, a lot of our friends are there, and they are suffering on their daily life. It's at the end of the year, Lebanon will be one of the poorest places in the world. We are talking about a whole system that will collapse. Schools, university. We had a very high level in school and university, a very sophisticated place of production, meanings in all domain. But today people have to deal and to fight so much to be able to survive in their daily life, meaning you have to go every day to the bank to be able to withdraw a small money and after negotiate, but not in our meaning, in another survival mode with others that everybody's tired. Of course, we have still great expectations in a revolution, or so-called revolution, that started in in October 2019. But the terrible blast that happened on August traumatized a big part of the population, and they need time to go out of this situation. We were there. Joana managed to survive by miracle, but we will continue to live and
I think
fight.
that when we started working together, Khalil and me, we were really young, at 19, 20. What was really, we were really angry, and today we are also very angry. And I think it's very important to stay angry. And what was our motor, our aim, and what was at that moment, where in the 90s, where like we can't understand, like we start a war and then we finish a war, and we put everything into bracket and we say like, okay, we had an incredibly tragic and violent civil war or civil wars for 15 years, and now okay, population, go back to your normal life. Everything is okay. We're gonna rebuild this country. We're gonna make it an economical success, and we were not okay with that at all. So this is why we started doing images and films and questioning, and with a lot of people from our generation. We were not alone. With Rabia, for example, that you see in Je veux voir, all of us, we really wanted to address this question to our society, and we were not okay with the systems that was built after the war, because they took the same people, the same leader, criminal leader, and put them in as minister or as deputy, and so we couldn't believe that. So, and we feel that this is only the continuity of something that was very rotten, and today it's exploding. So we are just continuing what we're doing, with more anger and more sadness than ever, because this is a population that has been suffering for so many years. And of course, it's not to say that people are innocent, and okay, but there is responsibilities, and Lebanese population is suffering a lot today, and this crisis has like responsibles, and so our work is always to do films and to talk about this situation, so people can understand that what happened in Lebanon is not totally far from what could happen in other countries. Lebanon people can say like, okay, Lebanon is, okay, this is a country that would never be okay. Okay, I can't stand this idea, so I have to continue doing films, producing complexity of representation and other kind of representation that what we see in the media, to be able to understand also how to talk about history, not only the history of Lebanon, but the transmission, the continuity, the cycles that we've been working on and talking about, this idea of disaster and regeneration. This is what I think we try to understand more. Because when you work on archaeology, and to go back to end this with when you started, you have a kind of vertigo, like all this archaeology is all what we've lived is in 6 meters maybe of dust and soils and traces, and so it's something that is very microscopic, an infinite thing, but also it says something about us.
Joana Hadjithomas, Khalil Joreige, many thanks. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.